Avira. So, welcome everyone to the Teen Debaters. I'm Sarah, and we're so excited to have you all here today. Please don't hesitate to drop your questions in the chat during the session, and we'll definitely get back to you. The Teen Debater is an organization dedicated to revolutionizing debate education, access, and activity for schools and students across India. We want debate to be a powerful tool for social mobility and change, and make it accessible for free. We aim to enhance your critical thinking, expand your worldview, but also go beyond debate and build a community. Your speaker for this special session on Research on Crisis Committee, Avira Bhatt, will now begin.
Yeah, thank you. This is just a session on crisis. To kind of go a bit more deeper into it. I've done crisis committees. I love crisis committees, so I'm really excited to talk about this topic. Again, please go through all these links, our Discord, our Instagram, and our email if you want to contact us for any reason. And we'll be always happy to help out. So this is again like a crisis 101 type of thing, and we're going to talk mainly about research and kind of letting down like the foundation of crisis. We can go to the next slide. Yeah. So how to research for crisis committees, right? So for example, we need like tools that are going to be like our rock, are going to be our support when we're doing crisis teachers, like crisis committees. And that is extensive research. So of course, everyone already knows what MUN binders are. You often keep a binder with you when you're doing MUNs, which have all of your research, all of, different sources or different quotes you want to take. And that is equally as critical in DISEC or all of these larger committees as it is in crisis, because again, a lot of time crisis is based on history, and you need to know what historical context it is, any quotes, any ideas that you want to take out of certain texts and stuff with you in your research. And by thoroughly researching, you will be so much ahead of other people in crisis, because it's such a ball game to go and do research, right? Like, and I really thank you for turning on your camera. So it's such a important thing to do research, right? Like for example, if I'm in the Lok Sabha in the past, and or if I'm doing any sort of past committee, and for example, I'm doing Mahatma Gandhi now, if another person simply just scans over him as a person and just go through his Wikipedia page, while I on the other hand go through every single thing he has done, what his personality was like, how he would interact with different groups, what was his relationships with every single other person in the crisis committee, won't I be such a more stronger like player than the other person who's done a surface level research? So that's why crisis is like research is almost more important in crisis committees than in normal committees. We can go to the next slide. Yeah. All right. So then questions to keep in mind. So you guys can go ahead and take a screenshot of this if this is necessary. And just or note these down somewhere, because this is really important when you want to do crisis committees. And I'll kind of explain each of the questions because they're really important. Especially, I mean, for all types of historical sort of crisis committees. Like, firstly, for example, what is your job and responsibilities? If I'm an army general, what does my job entail? What am I trying to do with being an army general? Who am I commanding? What power do I have? Because when you're writing crisis notes, when you're creating like resolutions, for example, you need to do something that you can actually have under your jobs and responsibilities. If I'm an army general, I can't talk about like agriculture, for example. That's completely out of left field. So you have to make sure that you know your jobs and responsibilities. And then second, of course, is any past relative jobs and any past contacts in your expertise that you've had. So maybe I did know about agriculture. Maybe I was the agriculture minister before I became the army general. So of course, any public figure roles, you should all know that. That's pretty basic stuff to know in an MUN, because that will really build a character. Imagine researching for crisis like building a character. I mean, I know they're real people in real life, but at the end of the day, you're kind of role playing as a character. And when you know every single thing about the character, what they look, how they talk, what are their past, or what is their family like, then you will really get to immerse yourself in that character and really put yourself as that in front of the chair. Because remember, the chair is the one who's creating all these background guides and stuff. If you seem oblivious in front of the chair, if you seem like you don't know anything about your own character or persona, then of course you're going to get lower marking. Then third is of course any family or financial resources. This is pretty straightforward. Any political allies or important links. So just like in larger like committees where you go to countries with similar ideologies, you should do that same with people, because at the end of the day, people also have their own ideologies and links. Some people are right wing, some people are left wing, and whatever, different types of ideologies. Now you can't go completely out of character and do something, really bizarre from your own political take. So you need to take that into account also when in MUNs. Then also, what is the currency and all of that stuff, and knowing your country and the neighboring ones. And last, and I think is something really important that people forget, is knowing your personality. Now I was in a sort of crisis committee which is really interesting, and I was doing the presidential candidate elections in 2028, so it was like a future crisis committee, and I was playing Vivek Ramaswamy. I won that crisis committee, by the way. But in that, when I wanted to know what Vivek was like, I didn't just go through his Wikipedia page. I watched his interviews and know what does he talk like. He's a very charismatic guy. Who does he bond with? Does he make jokes, or is he very serious and stern? Because that really shows how much you can get into that character, and also what decisions they'll make. If they're a happy-go-lucky person, maybe they will, bond with a lot of people. But if they're a very strict and stoic person, maybe they won't keep that many allies and, keep their enemies closer. So that stuff is really important to know. So I would highly recommend watching interviews if they're available, so that you really get to know what they're like. Going through their social media, if that's there, if they're a newer person, or if that's not possible, just to look through some stuff that they've talked about in their personal life, because that will really help you build a character. And yeah, these are just important questions to keep in mind. We can go to the next slide. Yeah. Now this is quite interesting. Oh, sorry, we skipped one slide. So what if your character is made up? Now this is quite a rare committee. A lot of times, like, crisis committees are just based on history, but what potentially happens if your character is made up? Again, the good thing is to just check the actions and opinions that in the background guide are there, that your chair has already provided, and really extrapolate on that. If certain qualities are giving, like hardworking and dedicating, and or believes in this and that, you need to create your own character out of it, as if you're an author. And that's how you can determine your portfolios and policies. As long as the crisis staff allow all of these creative ideas about your character, you're good. The thing about crisis committees, which is so unique, is that you're playing a person, not a country. So you can make rash decisions that a person can make, and not a country. As a country, you need to be very diplomatic, very formal in nature. But people aren't like that. People can do some crazy, wild things sometimes. So I'll tell you, I was once in an economic forum which is talking about the Great Depression, and I was one of the key players during that time. And I made a fake news article and slamming another company, and I posted it in front of my crisis, and it was like, this was posted in the news today, and then this happened and this happened. So you're actually a person there. It's not a country that you do a policy and then the problem gets solved. You can create drama. You can create, in one of my crisis committees, someone created a fake voice recording that two of the people in the crisis were plotting to kill a third member. So that's the stuff that can happen in crisis committees. It's totally unnatural and weird at times, but that's what makes it so much more fun, in my personal opinion, than all of these larger committees, because you can truly do some interesting and fun stuff in crisis. So really think of yourself as a character or role playing, or you're in a Renaissance fair, for example. Really, like, delve into that character, and if your character is made up, even better. You can make up stuff about them and create like a character bio or a position block on them. We can go to the next slide. Yeah. So then how to research your crisis committee? So of course you need to research the topic and the person you're representing. We've all talked about this. But what is trickier is that a lot of times information is really hard to find. For example, the Biafran revolution in Nigeria in 1968, or the Soviet invasion in Afghanistan. That is not stuff I think most people know on the top of their head. While, normal people in dissect can just have a basic view of what their country has done already. We need to go into the nitty gritties, and that's why Wikipedia can simply not suffice, and we have to get as much leverage as we can. Okay, you know about the Great Depression through Wikipedia, but I know about each of the single events, hence can leverage and use actual economic policies to make it better. I can reference all of this stuff. So that's the research you need to really take. And again, emphasizing research is super important. It's super fun as well sometimes. So we really need to get into it, especially if you're in crisis. Next slide, please. Yeah. So research for historical crisis. So for example, it's tempting to research everything about the crisis, right? Because It's a historical period of time. If I told you to research everything about 2020, you won't just research about COVID, you research about pop culture, memes, politics, all of this stuff, because 2020 was so much more than that. But that's really impossible to do unless you lived in that time. And more importantly, the point of crisis committees is that they diverge from what is originally historical. So, for example, I was coaching someone through a crisis committee, which was during the India and Pakistan like partition, and in that crisis committee, the partition didn't take place. So how can you research about something that didn't happen? That's why it's, of course, research is important, but you need to take like a whole holistic view of the time instead of like studying very, very specific things, although those can be helpful. And of course, there's going to be an alternate course of history. So it's more important for you to come up with new and innovative ideas on how, okay, if this happens, what can I do? If this happens, what can I do? So they have a basic general knowledge of how the committee works, what committee you are in. If you're in some sort of special alliance, then what did that alliance mean at the time? Of course, that stuff is necessary, but also remember that you need to be creative, and the history is going to change. There's going to be an alternate course of history. So you need to be on your toes for that stuff and not just rely on what took place at that time. Um, so yeah, we can go to the next slide. Also, if you guys have any questions, feel free to raise your hand or drop them in chat, and I'll try my best to answer them. And I know, of course, all of you must be on our Discord and Instagram, and we're planning a lot of interesting things related to MUNs, related to a writing competition also. So please look forward to that. All right, now crisis position papers. This is interesting. So what are crisis position papers? Crisis position papers are, again, you're just representing yourself, like creating a cue, like a narrative on what you are and proposing solutions for each topic. So there are a few things to keep in mind. Firstly, you need to demonstrate your knowledge on the crisis, like why is this crisis taking place, what is the problem at hand, and also the larger sub issues that are taking place during the crisis. Like, for example, if I'm in a presidential election, the main problem is that I need to win for president, but what are the problems at the time? Oh, people are really poor right now, or people are unhappy with the war that is going on at the time. So you need to take into account like larger issues that are in place that are interacting with the crisis. Also discuss like the character and all of that, and also what you use to solve the crisis in the character's view. And most importantly, you need to write in first person, with your character's bias in place. That is what makes crisis committees interesting. Countries can't be biased. We have to be diplomatic in nature. We have to be, formal. We need to be, good friends with everybody. Crisis committees, no. I'm not friends with everybody. I'm enemies with anybody. I'm plotting an assassination on one person. So you need to write with your bias in mind, and you need to be creative in that way. If your person is a really snobby, jealous, horrible person, then act like a snobby, jealous, horrible person. Write like a snobby, jealous, horrible person. Don't let your true personality shine through. You have to almost role play as that person. So you can use rhetoric and stuff as you want. And of course, they're less diplomatic than normal position papers. Crisis in general is less diplomatic than normal MUN. So you really need to take that into account. And that's what makes your crisis so interesting. As Vivek Ramaswamy, when I was in that crisis committee, I was screaming on the top of my lungs. I was pointing at people and I was talking about how the left is ruining society and all of that. Even though that might not personally align with my views, I'm really going to play into that character. I'm going to wear a bright red tie and I'm going to talk about how good Donald Trump was. And even though maybe that's not politically what you personally agree with, or maybe you do agree with that, the point is that you need to really play into that character and write with bias. Play as a biased, flawed person, not a perfect diplomatic country. We'll go to the next slide. Yeah, so objectives, of course, is that you need to intelligently discuss solutions, but you also need to find tools that will help you win the crisis. And by tools is that information that other delegates don't have. So this will make like show expertise. It will also like go in your crisis note and committee directives and all of this stuff. If you're unsure about what committee directives, crisis notes, and all of that is, we already have a crisis 101 session on our YouTube channel. So in case you want to check that out, please do feel free to do so, or you can just talk to me on Discord and I'd love to help you out. But yeah, you need to really know about other smaller nuances that people also don't. Of course, I'm talking about taking a larger picture, but also knowing about nuances, which is a really hard thing to do. But yeah, you need to also take into account solutions that your character already made, or your persona already made, but also realize that history can diverge. A new completely thing would happen. So you need to get into that mindset of, if I was this person, what would I do? If I was this person, what would I do? And not necessarily the smartest solution, the most beneficial solution to you. The next slide then. Um, yeah. So things to look out for. Yeah, this is a pretty important thing to know. Of course, first, the general timeline of the crisis from beginning to end. So for example, if it's the Great Depression, know about the Great Depression a little bit before, during, and how it ended. The overview of the tensions and conflict that caused the crisis, different parties, different countries involved, major issues that caused someone to win or lose, and the major subtopics, what each side wanted in the conflict. So this is the main problem, I think, when I'm coaching through people who are just getting through MUNs, is that you get a little bit too self-centered. When you're researching on your own character, you only think about what your character wants. But at the end of the day, everyone is thinking about what everyone's characters want. What you need to also research is, okay, I am this person, but what about other people in my committee? What do they want? Is there a particular partnership that I can get with them? Oh, is some of their views conflicting with mine? Can I do something that can push them away real quick? Can I, potentially get a really elaborate plan to kick them out of the committee? And that's what makes so I'll tell you. So I was in economic forum in America. I was the vice president at the time of America. And this is, yeah, the some economic crisis that took place in the 1900s. And then I got demoted. Like, I got kicked off of the presidential panel, and I literally had to go outside the crisis committee, come back in, and then I was a new character all of a sudden. And I didn't research anything about this character, and that what made me so unprepared. And that's why I was third in that MUN and not first. And I was this company. I was not even a character. I was now representing a whole company called J and Co company. But although I was able to like kind of navigate through the crisis, you can get killed off, you can get sent to jail, you can get demoted. So you need to really know about the whole holistic context and not just about your character, because anything can happen in a crisis. Your character can dissipate and you have to come as a new character all of a sudden. So that's what is really important, to have like a general knowledge. And the main way you really know about all of these things is going through your background guides. Your chair creates background guides for a reason. Research everything in your background guides. If they give any additional links, go through those links. If they give any guiding questions, research on those questions and just go beyond your background guide. But that's your base point. You should know your background guide inside and out. That's the main thing in all MUNs, not just crisis. We can go to the next slide. Yeah, so finding tools, right? So what are these certain tools we're talking about? And you can have a printout of these tools, but this is pretty fun and interesting, and you kind of feel like a mastermind when you have all of these in front of you. Firstly is the maps of all the local cities, road, military installations. So you can make, so for example, crisis notes are basically little solutions or actions you say that your character is going to do, that you send to the EV. In your crisis notes, if I just write, oh, do this, okay, you do that. But if I say, oh, do this at this time, at this road, with this many people, now I've suddenly gotten way more specific. That shows that I have way more understanding. So if your crisis notes are really detailed with certain, marks or connotations to the historical past, that will make you stand out way more than just a person who's like, oh yeah, start this firearm, like, or start this patrolling. Or if I say, no, start this patrolling at this street in this city with people from this division of the military. Now I'm way more knowledgeable than that other person. Then is a list of weapons, equipment. This is especially true if you're in a military general or some sort of position in that. Of course, economic, political, religious tensions, social tensions. Names of important individuals and leading oppositions and parties and rebel groups. Okay, in crisis committees, you're not only restricted to the people in the committee. You can write these things called communiques, which are basically documents that you send to people outside the committee. So you don't only have to communicate or form alliances with people in committee. You can literally talk to a hypothetical person that existed at the time, who's literally not in the committee. They're somewhere imaginary, and then the EB will give you like an imaginary response back. So you should create names of people who could help you out. If everybody else abandons you in the committee, no problem. Talk to people who are not in the committee and make them help you. So that's what you need to do. You need to talk, like, know about important individuals that you can write communiques too, and that's really, really important to do in crisis committees, because they're outside people that can help you, and then the EB is the one writing them back. So if you write a really good one, the EB might be likely to help you out. Then of course, economic military intelligence of and capabilities of involving parties. If you're going against a really economically strong opponent, then you should know how to handle that. And like organization charts of your country or body and the countries that is representing. So these are just basic things you should have. These are a few maps and stuff that you should keep. Like if you're keeping a map of India before the partition, that's going to look very different from the map of India right now. So when you're talking about certain alliances, or maybe you're drawing the parallels at which the country will be separated, you should have a map in hand so you can tell where that's taking place, and you don't seem very uneducated on that topic. So these are just important things you can keep in your binder or just know about. But yeah, I strongly recommend having these things. You can go to the next slide. Yeah, okay. Now these are the resources. Firstly, Wikipedia. It's unreliable. We've been told by all our teachers that Wikipedia is unreliable, it's not good, yada, yada, yada. But what the really good part of Wikipedia is, like, okay, let's think that you open Wikipedia, right? You open Wikipedia and then you scroll towards the right of the end. And at the end, there's going to be an index of all of the sources. You click on those sources and then you research. That's how you get the really good stuff out of Wikipedia, because Wikipedia articles, firstly, a lot of them are locked, so it's not all editable. But even when it's not not locked, where they quote certain stuff, when it's kind of blue and like it goes to another link, open those other links, because that's where Wikipedia got their information from. Go through those, and that's where you get the research, like resources. So those source listed at the end are way more credible for specific information. Then books. You can use online books, school libraries, Google Books as well, especially if it's, for example, on World War II, a crisis committee like that. You should read a few books on, or you should know, you can go through a few books on World War II, talking about the basic period of the time, the Holocaust and all of that. That's really important to someone. So if you want to go through a few books and chapters, because there are a lot of ones that are really detailing in a lot of things, but these are very high detail stuff. A lot of this you can just find on um, archives on the internet. Then there is academic basis. So Google doesn't index 99% of the internet, and is actually, even though Google seems such a huge barren of resources to us, there's actually a lot of huge troves of information that's like missing. So LexisNexis, George Washington University National Security Archives, US State Department Office, and of the Historian, all of these are academic databases that you can go through, especially if you're doing something on US history. Go through these databases, and they're really important and have a lot of information that you can't just Google and find out. Then for historical crisis, phone conversation transcript, declassified CIA documents, original newspaper articles. Don't be basic and just go through Wikipedia. This is how you find out their personality, what they were doing behind closed doors, and that's what you'll get to know more about it. And of course, more this declassified documents for modern crises, but still valuable. So I really liked, for example, when I was researching about Vivek Ramaswamy, I went through his whole Instagram, each and every single post, just to see what he was doing. And then I found out that on one post he talked about how he's pro-gun because he's a right-wing politician, and that how he went to this specific competition which talks about like promoting guns and ownership of guns. So when I was in committee, I actually referenced that convers like that competition in a crisis note, and like that I'm making a social media post on it, and that looked favorably to the EB because they know what this character is actually like and what they actually did, and they're mentioning specific details. So going through just personal items of that person, phone conversations, letters to loved ones, that's a pretty important thing as well, how they talked behind closed doors, and you'll really get to know that character more. We can go to the next slide. Yeah, and then international think tanks as well. So think tanks often have biases and receive funding from political organizations, but there's still a lot of well-researched articles, and they're more like readable than scholarly sources, because a lot of times scholarly sources are not formatted properly and it just looks like a mess. So like think tanks like the Council on Foreign Relations offer tools like Global Conflict Tracker You guys can note this down because this is pretty helpful just also for normal MUNs to know what are conflicts, major global issues. And then also organizations like the International Crisis Group offer insights on global crises in general. And they also suggest potential solutions for policymakers to consider. So this is also really important. So in case you can't find out solutions, just use someone else's. Of course, you should still not plagiarize. Please mention that you're using someone else's, but see what other people have already done. You don't need to be a genius and try to figure out your own economic policy. Just see what other people have already done and considered, and just know basic stuff like how inflation works, what is a recession, and stuff like that, and that will really help you out. And these international think tanks, of course, are biased, but I think they can really be helpful. This is where you should really like spend your time in researching and kind of building out your character. Again, after you research all of this, keep a binder, print all of this stuff out, keep a thick binder, set it on your on your desk, because in MUNs a lot of times internet is not allowed. If you want to search it through really quick, oh, I really want to mention this in my crisis note, you already have it there and it's already highlighted and pinpointed and all of that. So yeah, I think that's really an important thing that you can kind of focus on. Uh, Next. Yeah, that's it. That's it. This is just an introductory on how research works in crisis committees, how you kind of get started on it, but we're gonna get way more into it. And crisis is just so much fun. It's kind of hard to get into crisis because it's usually for more advanced delegates. There are usually 10 or 15 seats in crisis. But if you do get the chance to, I highly, highly recommend it. It's so much easier in some ways because there's only 10 people you need to compete with, but it's so much harder in some ways because these 10 people are the most well known, like have researched so much and know so much about this topic. So they're really smart 10 people. But that's what makes crisis really interesting. And then of course you can interact with the EB more. You can just do more in crisis MUNs, and I just view them as a completely different